My God. My God. Episode 3 is my favorite episode because it went full mask off. If you're writing a book and you need inspo for your villain, put a picture of Tyra Banks on that mood board. This gave me. Okay, let me slow down. America's Next Top Model chewed those girls up, ground them down into dust, and spit them out. It was very much give me your poor, you're abused, you're coming from abused families, you're traumatized, so that I can put them through the ringer. I get the sense, and I'll talk about Tyra going off on Tiffany because this gave me a new perspective, like something new to think about. Because once again, Jay let us know that it was so much worse than what we saw, and maybe people have seen that in interviews over the years. I didn't know. Also, my last post about episode 2 brought out some ghouls, some rape apologists, some rape culture enthusiasts. Disgusting. But Jay let us know that it was so much worse than what we saw, and that some of the things that were said, he will never repeat, like in public, and lawyers were called in the next day. Now, it's one of two things that had Tyra go clean off like that. Okay, either something about Tiffany triggered the crap out of her. Something about Tiffany's background, her demeanor, something that she saw, reminded her of herself subconsciously, whatever, and triggered the crap out of her, like one of the judges said. Or her ego was bruised and she was offended that Tiffany was squandering it, and that's why she went clean off. Now, obviously, this was edited because the way Tyra switches into, like, you don't know what the hell I've been through, I was not a victim, it's kind of giving the former, but it could very well be the latter, because Tyra, all the flowers to model Tyra, but America's Next Top Model Tyra, villain to the extreme. I was fascinated. I also appreciated the Killmonger-esque villain music that was playing during the parts where they were talking about what happened to Jay and what happened to Miss J and what happened to Nigel, but I'll get to that. The reason I say that it could very well be Tyra's ego that made her go off on Tiffany, and it's it's honestly to me a toss-up about which one it is I could see Tyra thinking, she brought Tiffany up from the bottom, and she could have in Tiffany a mentee, right? Like, she was going to mold, not just in general, the Next Top Model, like the show promises, but like Tiffany herself, mold her, and she would produce, the next it girl, it model, black it model, and thus Tiffany's legacy would always be attached to her. It would be said that Tyra Banks, created and nurtured and gave a second chance to the person who became the next it girl. Possible, because after watching this, like, Tyra's perspective is actually quite scary. This episode also, for the first time, like, I have been watching and been like, this smile that she's giving us, like, it never changes. It's always the same, like, level of smile, the same volume of smile. In this episode, it was quite creepy. Now, I knew that most of the girls' careers didn't go anywhere. This was not quite a launching pad, not for most of them. The winners, the top 3, the top 5, like, barely, some did, but barely any went on to have a successful modeling career or longevity, right? Like I said before, like Adrienne Curry, she went the reality show circus, and now she's living on a farm, I think. But to find out from what Danielle said that, was it Danielle? Someone was saying that the pictures weren't even usable because they were way too niche, too costumey, too much makeup. So she's over here yelling at these girls to take advantage of this opportunity. Are you sure you want to give this up? Are you sure you want to walk out this door? Grab this opportunity with both hands, make the most of it. We're going to launch you. And the pictures they were taking on the show, which is actually not hard to believe, especially for the later cycles, but the pictures they were taking on the show couldn't even be used outside of the show. Also, this was a great flashback to a time when being a reality star was a joke. Like, it was a surefire way to not be taken seriously. It is different now. And I think the Kardashians, because when the Kardashians first started, they were also a joke. But I think it is their reality show that revolutionized what it is to be a reality star. Back then, it was not like your second chance, right? A way to reinvent yourself. And definitely wasn't like quite a star maker. But now it is, but back then it wasn't. So, hearing that like the modeling industry, the agencies didn't really want to touch them because they were in top model, I was like, yeah. And I think over time, the whole like, oh, you're doing this, so you're a joke, that's not a real, like, the industry doesn't take that seriously. I think doing reality was replaced with like being a YouTuber. And then that became legit and was replaced by being an influencer. Oh, you're an influencer? That's a joke. And then I think, TikTok is changing that. But just an interesting, like, evolution. Anyways, her conversation with Danielle that 15 years later, I think that, I think there's something sick about her saying to Danielle, like, I always knew that there were some doors that you would never be able to enter because you were in top model, and I stood by and did nothing. What is that supposed to do for Danielle? You're not confessing. It doesn't sound like she was atoning. Are you trying to just like psychologically like torture her? Because it's sick. It is sick. Speaking of psychological torture, she brings Shandy on the Tyra show. Shandy tells her before she walks out that like, I've never seen the episode. I can't bring myself to watch it. I don't want to see it. And Tyra plays it. And not only does she play it, after Shandy tells her on the stage that I don't want to see it, again, Tyra then she never heard anything, touches Shandy in a comforting, mimicking comfort, mimicking the act of comforting, and says, I noticed that you couldn't watch it. Why? It's sick. And then let me talk about Jay and what happened there. First of all, episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, I always shook my head anytime the architects, and I'm counting Jay, Nigel, Miss J, but especially Tyra and Ken. I always shake my head when they're like, this was really hard for me. This was the hardest part for, like, you. But her threatening to blackmail, or like business affairs, threatening to blackmail Jay for wanting to leave is some mob boss shit. You threaten him to leave. You ask him to do one more cycle, or demand that he does one more cycle, threaten to blacklist him, which turns into multiple cycles. And then he shows up for the next cycle and you don't talk to him. You give him the silent treatment without explaining how you're feeling. Give him the silent treatment. But when the cameras are on, you're like, what did you think about that? It's giving, like, this whole treatment of Jay, Manuel, was giving me, like, mob boss, like, I'm sure there's, like, a John Wick, Continental Hotel, the high table, parallel analogy there, because it was very much like nobody's bigger than the program. And I'm not talking about the network. I'm talking about Tyra. No one's bigger than the program. And it's so interesting to me that Jay used the words like it was psychological torture. Oh, was it? Was it? You thought that was reserved for the girls. While you stood by and all you said was, oof. A lot of good that did. Oof. But, I couldn't say anything. Well, then you became an edit. You became an edit, only, it wasn't driving ratings, right? Like, America wasn't talking about it. You were just suffering in the back. I really was shocked watching this part, how she treated Jay. The fact that he sent her an email, which tells you about the relationship, because he was like, oh, it wasn't like, you spent so much time together, blah, blah, blah. It goes beyond a work relationship. Like, we had a relationship, and I'm like, and then when you needed to leave, you sent an email, which I guess was smart. Like, it gave, like, there was a hierarchy within this relationship, whatever it was. It very much gave, like, your boss is not your friend, and you have no friends at work. basically. So he sends her the email. She takes 3 days, and then the only thing she writes back are 3 words: "I'm so disappointed." Like, bitch, that is scary. Like, what you mean? And then you get him to a damn Faustin deal that he cannot leave. Okay, so that's Jay getting tortured, and nobody, like, that set sounds like, of course, like, the toxicity didn't end with how the contestants were being treated. Like, it sounds like even among themselves it was toxic, like, very, like, I'm not gonna show who I really am type of thing. So that's Jay. And then the new network head comes in, and then it's like, we need to cut these 3 people, and that's gonna magically make the show better and give it new life. If Tyra wasn't greedy, she could have predicted where this was going. So she cuts them, sends Miss J flowers for his birthday, and then 5 days later fires him. Miss J's entire reaction and facial expressions about that, he was like, he's just like, I'm not gonna come out of myself. I'm like, I was cracking up, laughing out loud. Lets Nigel go, and Nigel was real deal offended. Then says, like, oh, we will put out a statement together, and then leaks something to pay. Like, it's just ruthless. But then again, what do you expect? What more do you expect of someone like that who was willing to orchestrate so much of what happened on that show? It was ugly, but I kind of was just so intrigued by how terrible this woman is. Like, just like, I like she needs to be studied. Like, I think this documentary was kind of a study into her. But and the perma smile, and then she's saying there are no sacred cows, and that, like, I'm pretty sure they think that it was me and Ken, with good reason, because I'm pretty sure it was you and Ken. I think Tyra had enough clout to fight for them. And then, they talk about her being let go, and she's like, there are no sacred cows. I don't buy it. I do not believe that Tyra's being let go happened the way that Jay and Miss J and Nigel's happened. Because after those 3 were let go, the ratings fell by, 50%? For someone who was so obsessed with the success of that show and, like, being in the ratings and being in the headlines, blah, 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 I think she didn't see the writing on the wall with the 3 of them being fired. I think she saw the writing on the wall with the ratings. And I think by the time they let her go, she was ready to go. I do not believe, like, yeah, the show was her baby, but I don't believe that Tyra was still naively, wanting to be on the show for the next 5 cycles or whatever by the time she was let go. So I think her saying there are no sacred cows, and that includes me, I think that's a story that she is crafting for us, because she did learn how to be a good storyteller through America's Next Top Model, right? Right. And going back to Tiffany, where Tyra was like, she went off the rails, and, like, the reason why she went off on Tiffany was like it was some deep Black girl shit, because she was thinking about how society, like, please let go of the mother thing. Like, she had a whole, like, mother persona throughout this entire documentary, and I needed her to get off it. I'm not buying it, but I think that's how she saw herself and how she wanted to be seen through Top Model, and how she wanted these girls to see her, and probably how she wanted Tiffany to see her. I'm not buying it. And then she ends the documentary with the most, like, audacious last words, talking about some, like, it's good when people call you out, because that's how you, like, I was trying to teach somebody a lesson, because that's how you grow. And I can only hope that the same way that I had to, the same way I was called on my shit, that you be ready for the day that you're called on your shit, because that day is coming. Girl! Shut up! To end on a good note from this crazy ass ride, good documentary. I did learn a lot. Miss J. I hope to see the day that Miss J walks again. That was sweet. Like, Miss J, Jay, and Nigel, them going to see Miss J, obviously tracking his healing from when he could barely talk, could not talk, to now. He was in a coma for 5 weeks, I think, or was it 5 months? And Miss J reflecting on, like, I taught models how to walk, and now I can't walk, not yet. And he's like, it's not over for me. I'm not done. That was very touching, and I hope that he does walk again, and uses his new strength and is able to walk again. And then they asked, has Tyra ever? I was waiting for that question. Has Tyra ever visited you? And Miss J said, no, not yet. Tyra? Oh, there was also the part where they asked Tyra, are you ready to talk about what happened with Jay? And she was like, nah. I'll call Jay. Yeah, the same way you'll go visit Miss J. Villain inspo. Tyra Banks.